The storm came suddenly, like a beast that had been waiting to strike.
Dark clouds rolled over the blue-rich mountains, casting long, jagged shadows over the winding road.
The air was thick with humidity, the weight of impending rain pressing down on everything. In an instant, the storm that had seemed so distant now raged ferociously, making the mountain roads treacherous. Inside the Anderson family's SUV, all was quiet. The family of three, Mark, his wife Sarah, and their 6-month-old son Noah, were returning from a small cabin trip, eager to get home. As the windshield wipers swiped desperately against the rain, Mark struggled to see clearly. The visibility was nearly zero. "Mark, slow down." Sarah's voice trembled from the passenger seat. "The roads are too slick. We need to take it easy." I know. Mark responded, gripping the steering wheel tighter, his eyes scanning the darkening road. But the storm was too powerful. The tires skidded on the wet asphalt. Mark tried to correct the vehicle, but it was no use. The SUV swerved violently to the right, then back to the left, spinning uncontrollably. Sarah screamed. "Hold on!" Mark yelled. There was no time for anything else. The vehicle crashed into a rock wall, the impact jarring their bodies violently against the seatbelts. The world spun in chaos as metal screeched and glass shattered. The SUV flipped and tumbled down the steep slope, finally coming to an abrupt halt against a tree. For a moment, everything went still.
Mark's head slammed against the airbag, that's it.
Blood trickled down from his temple, and his vision blurred. Sarah was unconscious, her face pale. In the back seat, Noah's baby car seat had been ejected from the wreckage, tumbling through the air before landing hard against the ground, miraculously still intact.
Trug the roar of the storm and the wreckage, a piercing CYQ trug the air.
Noah. The baby's cries echoed in the distance, faint but distinct. It was a sound of pure, raw desperation. Max, a German shepherd once trained as a rescue dog, was living wild in the Blue Ridge Mountains after running away from his past. Max had been abandoned by his last handler, left to roam the wilderness with no purpose. His instincts had grown sharp, and he had learned to survive on his own, but he had also become wary of humans, afraid of betrayal. Tonight, the storm had driven him out of his shelter. He padded through the thick trees, feeling a strange tug in his gut. Something was off, something was wrong. And then he heard it.
The CYQ.
Max's ears perked up. His nose twitched. The sound was unmistakable. A baby, helpless, lost. Max hesitated. His instincts screamed at him to run, to ignore the human cries. He had learned the hard way that humans weren't always kind. But there was something about this cry. It pulled at his heartstrings, and before he could reason further, his legs were already moving. He tracked the sound through the trees, his paws silent against the forest floor. The wreckage of the SUV came into view, and Max froze. He could smell blood, human blood. His sharp eyes scanned the area, spotting the overturned vehicle, its headlights still flickering faintly. The rain had begun to fall in sheets, but Max didn't flinch. He moved closer, ears flat against his head, ready for danger. His eyes caught sight of the baby seat. The little one was alone in the wreckage, abandoned in the wilderness. Max's body went rigid. He approached cautiously, growling low in his throat, but his heart ached as he saw the baby lying there, unconscious, barely breathing. Noah's tiny chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, his face streaked with tears, his little hands curled tightly into fists. Max knew this was dangerous. There was no reason for him to help, no reason for him to get involved. But despite the conflict brewing inside him, something urged him forward. His training, buried deep within his mind, pushed him to act. Should I leave him? Max thought to himself, his eyes fixed on the baby. Should I let nature take its course? He's just a human, nothing more. I owe them nothing. But Max's legs moved of their own accord. He trotted forward, his instincts taking over. He carefully nudged the baby's body, his paws gentle, as if trying to wake him. But Noah was out cold. Max hesitated for only a second before he nosed the baby seat, trying to pull it toward him. The baby stirred in response, his soft, weak cry breaking the silence of the night. "Noah?" Max whispered quietly, his deep voice rumbling in his chest. No, he wasn't talking. But the sound from the baby was a desperate plea for help. Max, ignoring his wariness of humans, gently dragged Noah's seat closer to the cover of a nearby cave. It was the only place to shelter from the storm, to keep the baby alive, to give him a chance. His decision was made. Max wasn't just a stray anymore. He was a hero, even if he didn't know it yet. The storm raged on, relentless and cold, as Max pulled the baby's car seat deeper into the cave. The sound of the wind howling outside was deafening, and the heavy rain created a constant drumming noise against the rocks. Max's heart pounded in his chest, but his instincts kicked in. The cave was their only sanctuary, and he had to protect Noah, no matter the cost. Max settled beside Noah, curling his body around the baby in an attempt to shield him from the cold and the storm. He could feel the baby's faint breaths, shallow and irregular. The small body was ice-cold, trembling under the wet fabric of his clothes. Max nudged him gently, trying to keep him warm with his own body heat. "Stay with me, little one," Max murmured, though Noah could not hear. He had no words, no understanding of the depth of the commitment he had just made. But the bond was there, silent but unbreakable. Hours passed, but the storm never let up. Max's mind was sharp, focused entirely on the baby. He knew he had to do something to keep Noah alive. His survival instincts, honed from years in the wild, guided him. He knew how to survive, and now he had to teach Noah, even without knowing how. Suddenly, the quiet of the cave was broken by a low growl. Max's ears flicked forward, his hackles raised. His body stiffened, and his muscles tensed. His eyes darted around the cave, trying to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. Out of the darkness emerged the unmistakable shape of a mountain lion, its eyes glinting with hunger. It padded silently towards the entrance of the cave, its large paws barely making a sound. Max's heart raced, but he didn't move. He couldn't, he had to protect Noah. The lion stopped in its tracks as it spotted the baby. It sniffed the air, its gaze shifting between Max and the vulnerable child. The mountain lion crouched low, preparing to pounce. Max's instinct screamed at him to attack, to protect.
"Stay back."
Max growled, his voice deep and menacing. His tail bristled, and his muscles coiled, ready to strike. The lion hesitated, sensing the danger in Max's posture. But hunger outweighed caution. It lunged forward with a terrifying speed. Max's body moved faster than he thought possible. With a guttural bark, he leapt towards the lion, sinking his teeth into its scruff. The lion snarled in fury, thrashing under Max's grip, trying to break free. But Max's jaw was locked tight, refusing to let go. His claws scraped the stone floor, his paws sliding on the wet ground.
"No."
Max barked, twisting his body to hold onto the mountain lion. The lion clawed at Max's face, leaving deep scratches, but the dog did not release his hold. The battle raged on for what felt like an eternity, each animal growling and snapping, fighting for dominance. But Max's determination to protect Noah gave him the strength he needed. He dug his claws into the ground and twisted, forcing the lion back. With a final desperate push, Max used his powerful legs to shove the lion back out of the cave, where it turned and fled into the wilderness. Max stood panting, his body covered in blood, the pain from his injuries radiating through him. But he couldn't stop now. He had a mission to complete. He limped back to Noah, who had remained silent and still throughout the entire ordeal. The baby was unconscious, but at least he was safe for now. Max nudged Noah gently, trying to comfort him. The wounds on his own body burned, but he didn't care. He wasn't going to let anything happen to this baby. Not while he still had breath left. "I'll keep you safe," Max whispered, his voice hoarse from the battle.
"No matter what."
The night seemed endless, but Max kept watch, never allowing himself to sleep, not even for a moment. He listened to the sound of Noah's shallow breathing and the distant growl of thunder outside. The storm was still raging, but now it seemed like nothing compared to the storm inside Max's heart, a storm of loyalty, courage, and resolve. At dawn, Max managed to find some water, using his keen sense of smell to track down a small stream nearby. He brought it back to the cave, carefully drinking first before nudging the water towards Noah. The baby stirred slightly but did not wake. Max's wounds were beginning to take their toll. His side ached, and the pain in his leg was becoming unbearable. His fur, matted with blood, made him look smaller than he really was. But his spirit remained unbroken. He knew that as long as he had strength, he would protect Noah. As the day passed, Max did what he could to help Noah. He found a few wild berries and some edible plants, knowing they weren't enough to heal him, but they might help with his dehydration. He tried to keep Noah comfortable, adjusting his position in the cave as the sun began to set once more. Max's body was failing, but his determination only grew stronger. "You'll make it," Max muttered to Noah, his voice soft but filled with a fierce protectiveness. "You'll make it, little one." The hours blurred into days. Max's injuries were taking their toll, but his resolve never wavered. He stayed close to Noah, watching over him like a sentinel. The storm eventually subsided, but the damage had been done. The mountains were slick with rainwater, the wind still howling through the trees, leaving only a faint trace of the wreckage and the baby's cries that had once echoed through the wilderness. Max kept Noah warm and safe, though the weight of exhaustion was heavy on his shoulders. He had fought a mountain lion. He had kept the baby alive. But his strength was draining. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of helicopters and vehicles began to cut through the silence. The search teams had arrived, their search efforts in full swing, combing the rugged terrain for any sign of life. But the wreckage of the Anderson family's SUV had been nearly impossible to find without the help of someone, or something, capable of leading them. Back at the crash site, Sarah and Mark's bodies were found first. The searchers had been focused on recovering the remains, but when the area was cleared, it was the slightest clue that hinted at the baby's survival. A small blue blanket was found, tangled wet, and hanging from a tree branch. That was the only sign the searchers could find. But the baby was still missing. Max stayed vigilant, though his body ached with every movement. He limped from one corner of the cave to the other, his eyes never leaving Noah. The baby was still unconscious, but his breathing had stabilized, and Max took comfort in that small victory. It was then, as Max lay beside Noah, that he heard the sound of voices. The crackle of radios. The distant rumble of a vehicle's engine. The search teams were close. He stood to his feet, his paws scraping against the rough stone floor. His body was weak, his vision blurred from the blood loss, but he forced himself to move. He had to lead them to Noah. He barked once, but no one was close enough to hear him. Max padded carefully toward the entrance of the cave, but a sharp pain shot through his side as he moved, causing him to stumble. His body was betraying him, but he kept going. Max finally emerged from the cave, his coat matted and streaked with dirt and blood. He stood in the open, the faint sunlight casting a shadow over him. He raised his head and let out a sharp, urgent bark. He could hear them now, human voices, closer than ever. The searchers were near. Max turned back and trotted toward Noah, his body dragging behind him as if weighed down by the burden of his duty. He reached the baby, nuzzling him gently before turning back, his eyes still searching for the figures approaching in the distance. As he padded back towards the entrance of the cave, a group of rescuers finally emerged from the trees. They were led by Captain Thomas Williams, a seasoned search and rescue team leader, and his men. Their eyes locked on Max as they approached. "There. Over there," one of the team members shouted. Max raised his head slightly, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His instinct screamed at him to keep Noah safe, but his body was failing. The rescue team approached cautiously, their radios crackling as they communicated with each other. Captain Williams stopped a few feet away from Max, eyeing the dog with suspicion. "That's him, isn't it?" Williams said, his voice low. "The dog that led us here." Another member of the team nodded. "It's the only lead we've got. But where's the baby?" Max whined softly, his body trembling with exhaustion, and then, as if to make sure the rescuers understood, he turned and led them toward the cave. The team followed, but Max's movements had become sluggish, his pace faltering. He was losing strength with every step, but he wouldn't stop until Noah was safe. Inside the cave, they found Noah, small and fragile but alive. "Is he?" one of the rescuers asked hesitantly, looking to Captain Williams. The team leader knelt beside the baby, checking his pulse. "He's alive," Williams said with a sigh of relief. "Just barely." The paramedics quickly moved to tend to Noah, wrapping him in blankets and stabilizing his vitals. Max, however, wasn't done yet. He limped toward the group of rescuers, a faint growl escaping from his throat, urging them to hurry. "Thank you," a paramedic whispered as she worked, gently touching Max's head. "You saved him." Max didn't respond. His body swayed as his legs gave way beneath him. He collapsed to the floor of the cave, too weak to stand. His eyes never left Noah. Captain Williams crouched beside the dog, his hand resting on Max's bloodied fur. "You did it," Williams whispered, his voice filled with awe. "You brought him back." Max gave one last, shallow breath, his body still. He looked at Noah, and then, as if his job was done, he closed his eyes for the final time. Max was gone. The rescue team worked quickly, their hands moving with urgency as they checked Noah's vitals, applying medical care as best as they could. The baby had been through so much, days without food or proper care, exposed to the elements in a storm, and yet he was still alive. It was nothing short of a miracle. But as the team continued to tend to him, they couldn't ignore the lifeless body of Max, still and unmoving at the edge of the cave. Captain Williams stood there, silently watching Max for a moment, his face a mixture of awe and sorrow. He had been skeptical of the dog's role in Noah's survival, dismissing him as nothing more than a stray. But now, standing here, seeing the bloodied body of the dog who had fought a mountain lion and sacrificed himself for the baby, he realized how wrong he had been. "He saved him," Williams whispered, barely able to find the words. "This dog, he saved that boy." The paramedic, still attending to Noah, nodded, her voice quiet but filled with reverence. "We wouldn't have found him without him. He's a hero." Max's body lay still in the cave, his legs splayed out awkwardly. His fur was matted with blood, dirt, and the remnants of his battle with the mountain lion. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and faint. He had given everything to save Noah, and now he had nothing left. The team carefully lifted Noah into the rescue stretcher, but Captain Williams couldn't take his eyes off Max. The dog had protected the baby, fought against impossible odds, and had done so with a love and loyalty that transcended the boundaries of species. He had proven that even an animal, often overlooked and underestimated, could perform incredible acts of courage. "Take care of the baby," Williams said, his voice hoarse. "I'll stay here with him." The other rescuers nodded and began to move Noah back to the helicopter, but Williams remained by Max's side. He crouched down, gently resting a hand on the dog's head, his fingers brushing through the matted fur. "You've done your job, soldier," Williams said softly, his voice barely audible over the crackling of his radio.
"You did it, I won't forget you."
There was no answer, only the wind whispering through the trees outside the cave. The storm had passed, but the weight of what had just happened remained heavy in the air. Captain Williams stayed by Max's side for a moment longer before he finally stood, wiping a tear from his eye. Hours later, the rescue team returned to the crash site with Noah safely in tow. He was still unconscious, but his condition had stabilized. The paramedics were hopeful he would make a full recovery. As they loaded him into the helicopter to take him to the nearest hospital, the full gravity of the situation began to settle in. Without Max's intervention, the rescue mission would have likely failed. The dog had kept Noah alive through sheer willpower, despite his own injuries and the harsh conditions. Back at the base camp, Noah's grandfather, William Anderson, had arrived. He had been contacted as soon as the news broke that Noah had been found alive. His heart leaped when he heard that his grandson had survived, but when he saw the state of Noah, pale, weak, but breathing, he couldn't help but wonder about the other survivor of this nightmare.
"Where is the dog?"
William asked, his voice trembling with concern. Captain Williams approached him slowly, his face solemn. "The dog didn't make it. Max saved Noah's life. He fought off a mountain lion, kept him warm, kept him safe. But..." His voice trailed off. "Max didn't survive." William's heart broke at the news, but he wasn't surprised. He had known that Max's bond with Noah would be something extraordinary, even from the moment he had heard the stories of how the dog had acted. The loyalty and courage Max displayed were nothing short of heroic.
He stod in Silence for a moment, processing everything.
Then he turned toward the helicopter where Noah lay, hooked up to medical equipment, and walked toward the aircraft with a determined look on his face. "I'll make sure he knows," William said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "Max will be remembered for what he did. Noah will grow up knowing that this dog saved his life." Back at the hospital, Noah was placed under careful observation. The medical staff worked tirelessly to ensure the baby was fully hydrated and nourished, but the emotional toll of the experience was still apparent. He had been found, alive, against all odds. But Max's sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone involved in the rescue. The dog had given his life, not just to save Noah, but to give the Anderson family another chance at happiness. Noah had recovered remarkably well, but the trauma of the experience was not easily forgotten. William made it a point to tell Noah about Max every day, recounting the dog's bravery, loyalty, and the ultimate sacrifice Max had made. William wanted Noah to grow up understanding the depth of that love, to always remember the dog who had saved him when no one else could. And so, every year on the anniversary of the rescue, William would take Noah to the spot where Max had taken his last breath. They would stand together, looking out over the mountains, and William would tell Noah about the dog who had been his protector when no one else could. One winter afternoon, when Noah was much older, he stood at Max's grave, his eyes glistening with tears. He had grown into a strong, compassionate young man, shaped by the love and sacrifice of a dog who had given everything to save him. "I'll never forget you, Max," Noah whispered, his voice barely more than a breath.
I owe you everything. You gave me life, and now, I live to honor you.
The wind rustled through the trees, as if Max himself were still out there, watching over him. Noah stood in silence, a deep bond between him and the memory of his furry hero, knowing that Max would always live in his heart. The years passed, but Max's memory never faded. For Noah, it became a guiding light, an example of pure, selfless love. Though he had only been a baby when Max had saved him, Noah's understanding of the bond between himself and the brave German shepherd grew with every story his grandfather told him. William Anderson, Noah's grandfather, had kept his promise to Max. He made sure that Noah would always know about the dog's incredible sacrifice, and he did so by recounting Max's heroic actions at least once a week, sometimes even more often. As Noah grew older, he would visit Max's grave with William. The two would stand side by side, the wind whispering through the trees, and William would tell Noah more stories. How Max had fought the mountain lion, how he had saved Noah from the storm, how he had protected the helpless baby without hesitation. "Max was more than just a dog, Noah," William would say. "He was a hero, and heroes don't always get the recognition they deserve. But he saved your life, and that's a debt you'll never be able to repay. But you can live a life that honors him." Noah would listen intently, his small hands clutching his grandfather's, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and love. He understood that Max's courage was a part of him now, woven into the very fabric of his being. He would never forget that dog, no matter how much time passed. As Noah entered his teenage years, he began to fully grasp the weight of the lessons Max had taught him. He found himself drawn to helping others, becoming an active volunteer in his community. Whether it was assisting with animal shelters, participating in rescue efforts, or helping his neighbors, Noah felt that it was his duty to carry on the spirit of loyalty and courage that Max had shown him. William watched with pride as Noah grew into a compassionate and determined young man. He knew that Max's legacy would live on in Noah's actions, his decisions, and the way he treated the people around him. One summer day, when Noah was about 16, he came to William with an idea. He wanted to start a program that would honor Max, a program that would help children in need of rescue, in situations similar to what he had been through. He wanted to build a network of rescue dogs, specifically German shepherds, who could work alongside children, teaching them about resilience, loyalty, and trust. "I want to help children the way Max helped me," Noah said, his voice filled with purpose. "I want to teach them that there's always hope, that there's always a way out, just like Max showed me." William beamed with pride, tears glistening in his eyes.
"You've grown into a fine young man, Noah.
Max would be so proud of you."
And so, Noah's vision came to life.
He named the program Max's Legacy, a tribute to the dog who had saved him. He worked tirelessly to train rescue dogs, partnering with local shelters, and helping them find homes. The program focused on placing these dogs in homes where they could provide comfort and protection to children in need, those who were lost, hurt, or abandoned. Each dog in the program was named after Max, and Noah made sure that every dog had a story to tell. He shared Max's story with every child who entered the program, ensuring that they understood the significance of the bond between a human and an animal. The years went by, and Noah grew into a young man who was now in college, studying veterinary medicine and working on his dream to build a more humane world for animals. On the anniversary of the day Max had saved him, Noah and William decided to do something special. They traveled to the Blue Ridge Mountains, to the place where Max had made his final stand. Together, they planted a tree in Max's honor, a symbol of life and resilience in the place where Max had fought to the end. William stood beside Noah, his hand on his shoulder, as they watched the small oak tree take root. "This tree will grow strong," William said, "just like you did. Just like Max's memory will continue to grow in us forever." Noah nodded, his eyes misty. "He saved me, Grandpa. And now, I get to save others, thanks to him. Max gave me a second chance at life. And I'll spend the rest of my life giving back, just like he did." They stood in silence for a while, watching the tree sway in the breeze. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the mountains. Noah's heart was full of gratitude, full of love, and full of memories of a dog who had given everything for him. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Noah whispered, "Thank you, Max. I'll never forget you." Years later, Noah would go on to build the Max's Legacy program into a nationwide initiative, reaching hundreds of children and families. The dogs, trained to be heroes in their own right, carried Max's legacy forward. And with each life saved, with each bond forged between child and dog, Max's memory lived on. Noah's story, and the story of Max, became a symbol of love, courage, and sacrifice. It reminded everyone who heard it that true heroes come in all forms, human and animal alike. And the love shared between them could change the world, one life at a time. As Noah stood on the podium at a fundraising event for Max's legacy, he looked out at the crowd, his heart swelling with pride. The work they were doing was far from over, but it was something that would never be forgotten. He glanced up at the stars, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Max," he whispered to the night sky, "this is for you. Thank you for saving my life. I'll make sure your legacy never fades." And in that moment, it felt as if Max was watching over him, proud of everything Noah had accomplished and the life he was living. A life full of love, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and a dog. This story highlights the incredible bond between humans and animals, specifically focusing on the heroic actions of a German shepherd named Max, who saved a baby's life during a dangerous and tragic situation. Max's bravery, loyalty, and selflessness symbolize the qualities of courage and love that transcend species, reminding us that true heroes come in all forms. Max's sacrifice teaches us about the power of selflessness and how loyalty and love can change lives. This story encourages us to honor those who show us kindness and bravery, whether human or animal. It also reminds us that even in the darkest times, there is always hope, and there are heroes around us who help light the way. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, comment your thoughts, and share your feelings with others. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another meaningful story. Each interaction from you is a huge encouragement for us to keep producing content that inspires and uplifts. Once again, a heartfelt thank you for your support. Your engagement helps us continue to bring these emotional and inspiring stories to life. Stay tuned for more beautiful tales, and we look forward to sharing them with you. Thank you and take care.